I was calling to see if y'all could help with formula at all. I have a 2-month-old baby, and we ran out last night, so she's been going all day long without food.
We do have a benevolence ministry. I can take down your information and put in a request for you. It could take a couple of days. It could take a couple of weeks. We really just don't have a time frame there.
Okay, you said it would take a couple of days to weeks?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, if approved.
This person called dozens of churches. Of all of the churches, the majority of them were Protestant, a Buddhist temple, a Muslim mosque, and Our Lady of Fatima Catholic Church were the only 3 institutions that were willing to help immediately. Welcome to the Father Leo Show, where I'm dishing out faith, culture, and commentary. And in this episode, we're going to discuss a viral video that is putting all churches on notice. Does your church actually care for people? Are you here just to make money? And more importantly, how are you going to respond to people in need? And this is going to sound like a real simple conversation, but it is at the heart of why Christians and particularly Catholics are accused of hypocrisy. We've got to jump into this and unpack an incredibly challenging social experiment that is putting your church, your faith, on notice. It is that serious. But before we jump into it, please make sure your engagement by liking, subscribing, sharing, and commenting is helping us to overcome algorithms that I know are suppressing good, balanced Catholic pastoral content. I'm trying not to give my opinion, but just giving true analysis based on my Catholic priesthood of 26 years and working not just in the church, but working in the world. And I'll explain all of that in just a minute, but also we can do shows like this only with your support. That's just the reality. So please know that your support on patreon.com/The Father Leo Show does help us to continue to produce shows like this that can really help. And also, if you have a particular question and want to have it answered, you can leave it as what is called a super chat donation that happens only during the premieres that occur at noontime on Wednesday and Saturdays. That's when the shows are released. So help support the show and also brings your comment to the top of our chat so we can respond to you directly or in a future episode. So let's just jump right into it now, because our churches are put on notice. Are we truly helping, or are we hypocrites? This particular influencer or social media content creator, her name is Nikolai, and I am going to Nicolay, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it, but she's amassed a tremendous following with people who are trying to figure out, and they're kind of online right now debating all of this. And there are very few actual Catholic Church representatives who's responding to this. So I'm kind of like one of the few priests who's actually responding to this issue. And I'm just going to play a part of her video, or perhaps even the full video, and then some follow-up segments with it. And you're going to see how deep into the rabbit hole we can go with whether or not churches are being helpful or if they are hypocritical. Check this out.
So I'm calling your church to test to see if they would be willing to help feed a starving baby. So I had a lot of requests wanting me to call a mega church. So I'm actually calling Lakewood International Center in Houston, Texas. And then I also had a recommendation to play a crying baby in the background. So you will be hearing that. It is not real, okay? It is just to make it seem more realistic. And we're going to try it out and see if it changes the way they might want to help. I keep making this baby worse, and they still just, nobody really wants to help. So anyways, but let's go ahead and call and see if I can get somebody to feed this baby.
Thank you for calling Sacred Church. Your call is very important to us. Morning. Thank you for calling Legal Services. This is Ashley. How can I help you?
Hey, yes. I was calling to see if y'all could help with formula at all. I have a 2-month-old baby, and we ran out last night, so she's been going all day long without food. Is there any way y'all could help with formula?
We do have a benevolence ministry. I can take down your information and put in a request for you.
Okay. How long would that take?
We really don't have an estimated time just because we do receive a lot of requests here. Each applicant is different. It could take a couple of days. It could take a couple of weeks. We really just don't have a time frame there.
Okay, you said it would take a couple of days to weeks?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, if approved.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Ooh. Now, why is this important? Especially in the situation that we find ourselves economically, people are going to be in need, for sure, for sure. And this is not a point to put blame on one person or one church, but this person called dozens of churches, dozens, the majority of them are Protestant. And the result was that there were only 3 institutions that chose to help, at least at the point of this recording. There were only 3 institutions that helped. And you ready for this? Of all of the churches, the majority of them were Protestant, a Buddhist temple, a Muslim mosque, and Our Lady of Fatima Catholic Church were the only 3 institutions that were willing to help immediately. Immediately. Now, what's very interesting about this is that it has generated a ton of reactions, and understandably so. Why? Because the thing that people talk about the most that might not fully understand what they're talking about is politics, and next to that, it's religion. Everyone has kind of an opinion. Everyone has an idea of if they were God, how would they approach it? Well, guess what? I'm not here to accuse any church of being hypocritical. And why is that? Because if I judge that church, I am judging myself. Let's get to the heart of what this social experiment has done. It has uncovered many, many issues. And I think the number one issue is, do we actually practice what we preach? Number one. But secondly, the reactions of people after she kind of puts a notice on the church, and this is what she does. She actually puts an image of the church at the bottom of her screen, as well as the phone number to it, which, by the way, is public information anyway. So she's not doing anything illegal. She will call them up and she will record in complete, there's no editing, it's complete recording of the conversation between her, an alleged woman calling with a crying baby, and hearing the responses of generally the secretary or the person who's taking the phone calls. Sometimes it could be a volunteer. And it's making people evaluate the goodness of the church based on one thing. And people are leaving tremendously hateful and negative comments on the churches that are not helping her immediately. How would your church fare right now? I can tell you, I have been involved in parishes, and I am involved in work for churches across the United States, because I'm not a parish priest. Remember, I'm a missionary preacher. I'm an I've worked in the field of evangelization, but I also help consult for parishes to improve their systems. Let's talk about that a little bit later. But my premise is, if you take a look at how a restaurant functions, the most successful restaurants, how do they function, and apply those techniques to churches, then you're going to have at least a way to process the You're going to have a way to, how should I say, evaluate the processes that make whether or not your church is a good place or not. But I will tell you this, that any restaurant that if they want good reviews, they are going to help people in immediate need. Immediate need. If, for example, there is a fine dining establishment and a homeless person wants to go there to get a meal and they get turned away, that restaurant could really be put under serious suspect. And they a situation like this can actually shut it down. I can tell you, at my restaurant space or on the food truck, if anyone came to me with an immediate need for hunger, I would feed them. My staff knows to feed them. There have been many times when I've done it myself because I was working on the food truck and we used to park in an area where there were a ton of homeless people. And there were actually times when we actually gave away more food than made money. All right. And that's just the reality. And why? Because we're a mission. But as a Catholic church, I get kind of passionate about this topic because we are now being put on notice. And if there is a pastor or and I know that bishops are watching my show because I just hosted a bunch of bishops in my restaurant during their Conference of Catholic Bishops in the United States. Their meeting is in Baltimore every November. A few bishops have commented that they really appreciate my show. All right. I'm sure some of them don't like my show, but they don't say anything. I would welcome their feedback. And I think that's the key. This woman, who is an atheist, apparently, was just simply calling churches up, and she called a ton of them up, and she got no's from over 85 churches. The only 3 institutions that she called that helped were a Buddhist temple, a Muslim mosque, and 1 Catholic church. And here's kind of the impressive thing. I want you to hear what happened when she called the Catholic Church back up. That did help. Check this out. It's very telling. And by the way, I'm glad that the Catholic Church passed.
Hi, yes. My name's Luis Ramos. I'm with Our Lady of Fatima here in Alcoa.
Yes.
I just wanted to follow up with you. Our secretary on Monday mentioned that somebody had called, so she was looping in our our business manager and myself to say, hey, I think somebody's coming over to get some formula. But then we got an email yesterday. I guess it was a TikTok video.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I let her know when I called it. It was just an experiment to see.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, she after she hung up, she goes, I think somebody was testing to call to see if somebody else could call to come in to get it.
No, I don't have a need.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm good. I don't even have a baby. I was just testing to see if y'all would actually help if somebody called in and had a need.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and I haven't seen all of them, but yeah, unfortunately, ironically, I think a lot of churches actually, or organizations do refer to churches, especially right now since a lot of funding's gotten cut.
Yeah.
But if there are people that do need assistance or that part of what we did last week was collaborate with our local, some other local churches that wanted to help, and also our local food resources here in Blount County. And for every parishioner in our parish this past weekend, it should be on our main page, I believe. It's local food assistance, so we wanted to get that information out to the community. We don't have a ton of resources always for doing that, but we have like a blessing box outside of the so right next to like Walmart and Aldi. But as soon as it's filled, it's completely empty. So we did a big push because a lot of people come in and families or caseworkers from other nonprofits will call us and say, hey, can you help this family? And we help them directly.
So let me explain some things about how Catholic churches work in terms of providing assistance for people in need. Okay? Most people don't realize that food is the weapon that God uses to save us because it's the weapon the devil uses to destroy us. In my book, Epic Food Fight, A Bite-Sized History of Salvation, we trace the historical aspects of faith and realize one really important thing. God is a faithful foodie. How does God use food to save us? This book explores all of the significant ways that food is referenced in the scripture, referenced in our sacraments, and referenced in our personal celebrations. So every bite you eat is certainly not the Eucharist, but it could be an experience of God, not only satisfying you, but even saving you. The book, once again, is Epic Food Fight, A Bite-Sized History of Salvation. And guess how it ends? With an eternal banquet calling your name. Most Catholic churches, and I'm speaking only about Catholic churches because different denominations, the majority of them said they will only help their own members, in part because their communities are very small, very small. Catholic churches, while people like to criticize us, we are actually the largest Christian organization in the United States, okay? And we therefore are a little bit more mobilized. And every Catholic church that I have been involved in has some sort of outreach ministry to help people in need. And depending on the location of the church, you might actually have a full-time person who manages any requests that come to the doors during regular working hours. Okay, because there's very few places that are emergency services. And if there are emergency services, it would be a very community-sponsored organization. So in the churches that I know, they provide help in two ways, Catholic churches. One, they would kind of have a system where they can provide emergency relief from the church itself. But that generally is during regular working hours. And then there would also be a cooperation amongst other churches where they will kind of contribute to a food bank. In many cases, thank God, it's a St. Vincent de Paul program. So if there's one in your area, look them up and support them because they will get donations from different churches and congregations, even non-Catholic churches like mosques and Jewish temples and even, secular organizations. They will receive those resources generally in the area of food and some clothing and maybe some baby needs, and they would actually organize it. The problem with a social experiment like this, again, is that you cannot make a judgment on a church because of one phone call. A lot of these churches are not able to do it. But should they? Yes, there should always be some emergency funding to help people in dire need. The problem with this person's call, and I am not criticizing her, because while she probably didn't realize this, she was creating a culture of cancellation on that church. Or God was using her, whether she knew it or not, to create a culture of challenge. So we could have either been seen as a cancel culture or a challenge culture. And I see it more as the latter. I think that what she was doing was, because God is good, God can even work through people like her, and why wouldn't God work through even someone like her, and challenging churches. I consider her almost a type of a Shimei. I'm not sure if you know who Shimei is. Let me explain very briefly. Shimei was a person who accused King David, or actually called King David out for his sinful excesses and abuses. Remember, King David, the very highly honored King David, the Goliath slayer, the most cherished leader of the Jewish people, was also one who murdered Uriah and took his wife, Bathsheba, because he had an affair with her and got her pregnant. Yeah, this is in the Bible, okay? So the Bible accounts for human flaws. And as King David and his forces were coming through, I think a Benjamite town, I believe, Shimei was throwing stones and accusing David of this evil. And David's forces said, would you like us to go over and cut off his head? And this is what King David said. No, because maybe God is working through that man in his accusations, calling me out to humility and repentance. Yup. So yeah, someone like this can either be interpreted as someone who's trying to throw shade and hate on the Catholic Church, which there probably is a little bit of that because, let's admit, Christianity is a big target and people want simply to call us hypocrites. Or she is actually challenging the tenets of the faith. Whatsoever you do to least of my brothers and sisters, you do to me. She did, however, lie. She lied because some of the churches would ask, I need you to give a call to this food bank or this community service. And why? Because maybe that church contributes to that community service. And so they asked her, did you call this community service? And she said, yes, she did, when in fact she didn't. So she was lying or being deceptive. And so maybe had she called that community service, she would have gotten that help. Perhaps, I don't know. But in the case of a Catholic Church, you have to be able to provide immediate emergency service. Even though the Catholic Church does not exist to be a social service institution, we do exist to be instruments of charity. But there are also rules that need to be followed. And so she discovered churches that created a little bit of some rules situation, all right? And what's kind of interesting is that she actually called a pro-life center. But before we get to that real quick, let me just share with you what she did when she called Our Lady of Fatima Church up again. It's quite interesting conversation.
Okay, so I'm going to be doing a follow-up call with one of the churches that said yes during this experiment, and it is Our Lady of Fatima, I think is how they pronounced it when she answered the phone, Catholic Church, and we're just going to see what their experience with all of this has been. So I'm going to call them now and see what they say.
Our Lady of Fatima, this is Hannah speaking.
Hi, this is Nicali. I had spoke with somebody last week about the formula for the 2-month-old.
Yes.
I was just wanting to check in with you all and see how everything's been going.
Well, everything has been wonderful, but we do feel that this is God's work. So anything good that comes out of it will go to benefit those in need. So we are grateful for the gifts, the donations that have come in, and we will make sure that they go to the Community Food Connection that is here locally.
That's awesome. And again, I just wanted to thank you all for having the heart that you all do and, actually helping people in your community. I think that that's absolutely amazing.
Thank you very much.
Okay, what's kind of funny is that in the auto titles that are generated, and it actually said Satan. That's kind of frustrating for me to see that because it just shows how, I don't know, that there are issues with AI generated stuff. However, I offer this because I've worked in enough churches to know that sometimes the front desk person or the receptionist is not the best face for the Catholic Church. The example that I use is there was a church named the Crucifixion, Church of the Crucifixion. All right, and if you answered the phone by saying crucifixion, which some people might interpret, and supposed to, hello, and thank you for calling the Church of the Crucifixion. Well, there was somebody who called that church and the person who answered just said, crucifixion. In the same way, someone's like, yeah, McDonald's or something like that. You can see the impression. We have one opportunity to make a good impression. We got to work on this. We really have to work on this. And we have to make sure that we are prepared, because this is happening now more and more and more. In fact, there are some kind of follow-ups and people calling only mosques. And I can tell you that mosques are generally smaller. They're not always open all the time, but they're calling mosques up, and they are actually willing to even drop some cash, which I do not think is a good idea. Never give cash. Maybe churches could do a lot better job in getting gift certificates specifically for various things, whether it be emergency baby formula or food. There has to be always some sort of way where Catholic churches can respond immediately. But then here's the twist. She actually called a pro-life center. And I'm not going to play the video because it's a little bit long, but she actually called the pro-life center and asked if she can get emergency baby formula. And the pro-life center said, yes, we can. However, we would also encourage you to register for one of our programs. And the programs would provide her money in exchange for her time to take courses that would benefit her as perhaps a single mother. I don't even know what they called it. They called it maybe baby bucks or something like that. And basically it was an exchange where if they know that a mother is in need, and this is general rule for anyone in social ministry, if someone is in need once, they are probably going to be in need again and again and again. And you can either help them for the day or you can teach them how to fish. That's what Catholic churches need to do. Provide emergency services, but also encourage them greatly to take advantage of opportunities like classes on financing, maybe a skill set to help them to become more employable, or just to be part of a community that's going to support them, not just one time, but as an ongoing companionship thing. Because again, people will need, if they need it once, they're probably going to need it again and again. And the last thing we want to do is encourage a level of entitlement, because that's what churches can sadly do. I just give away free stuff, and guess what? There are no consequences. I can still keep doing what I'm doing and not help myself. And yeah, as churches, we have the responsibility to not only give some helping hands out, but more importantly, helping hand up, because we respect the dignity of every person that comes through our doors. All right? And it is kind of sad, however, that this has created a deeper conversation about whether or not our churches are truly being helpful or being hypocritical. So here's my recommendations. If you're a Catholic priest, or if you work in a church, or if you are a bishop and you're in charge of diocese, I would put out an APB immediately, and say that there are going to be people who are going to call your churches and they're going to test how you answer that phone. And if you are willing to help, and you better encourage that front face, that forward face, that first person, that point of contact, to be kind, receptive, and always answer in the positive. Yes, we can help you. And then say, how can you help? Guess what? Each church should have a way to provide emergency services. There has to be a way for emergency services. And by the way, I do get very annoyed with churches that just automatically go through an automatic loop, where as soon as you call, press 1 for this, press 2 for that. It just wasn't I remember working with a pastor who was just so amazing, and he had a large parish, very, very large parish, and he just abhorred the idea of having a non-person be the first point of contact. As Catholics, we believe in the incarnation of Christ. Let it be a real person and a well-trained person. In a restaurant, the host or the hostess needs to be professionally trained. They might have some natural skills to be a good communicator, but oftentimes every good restaurant will put them through a large training and make sure that they provide great customer service. And even if you can't take a person's reservation immediately, how do they talk to that person in order to tell them no with love? So anyway, we need real professionals as the point of contact. Secondly, that personal touch needs to be there. And thirdly, we cannot judge because of just one action. To her credit, she actually said, I don't want people to send any hate to that church. But that's unfortunately our cancel culture mentality. People are just going to send hate if they find anything disagreeable. And I can tell you that there are going to be some Catholic churches that are going to receive hate. And I don't want that to happen as a Catholic priest. I want us to continue to stay on top as the institution to go to for charity. And why? Because we are the largest charitable organization in all of world history. There is no other institution that has done more charitable good work than the Catholic Church. And there was actually this guy here. Oh, finally, the next thing I can say is be prepared. Just be very prepared. Have an actual plan. But also, let's make sure that we see this not as an attack on the Catholic Church or churches, because there is a cancel culture. But she just kind of highlighted a new culture, a culture of exposing through these social media challenges. So anyway, I want to kind of end with this, because this one experiment made not necessarily a lapsed Catholic, but he's just Catholic, perhaps a name. Listen to what he has to say.
I'm not religious anymore, but thank God I was raised Catholic, because I'm watching those videos of that woman who was calling the different churches and faith centers to see if they would offer baby formula. And the Catholic Church is one of the only Christian churches that showed up. And that's because it's taught in Catholicism that faith without works is dead. And for you non-denoms out there, that's biblical, James 2:26. And that was a big schism with Martin Luther when he formed Protestantism, is that he believed that, through faith alone, sola scriptura, if I just believe that Jesus is the Messiah, that is enough for me to go to heaven. And you can see through those videos that theology is inherently flawed, because that just shows that I don't need to act like Jesus, because since I already believe in him, I'm just going to go to heaven anyways. I don't actually have to act like Jesus. And you can see through it too that it's always just based off of, if they're going to heaven or not just that it's the right thing to do. Like, even one of the pastors made a response saying, well, the reason why we didn't do it is we were not obligated to do it. The reason why, for example, the mosques showed up is because it's an obligation in their faith. So you agree that your theology is that you don't actually have to act like Jesus and be a good person. And I went to a Catholic school, and these priests and nuns take an oath of poverty. They actually have to walk the walk and talk the talk of Christ. And I remember even before my first day at a Catholic high school, I was waiting in the parking lot with my mom in our car, for cross-country practice. And I remember this woman was trying to, she was there trying to figure out if she can get some bus money to travel somewhere. It was years ago, but I remember then a priest came, talked to her, got more information, and literally right there started, took out of his wallet, literally just boop, boop, here you go. That stuck with me. And I even remember my theology teachers in high school. They walk the walk, man. One of them, she actually follows me on here. Hi, Miss Hogan. But later on, she ended up becoming, a huge activist for stopping human trafficking. And, it's just badass. And I'm, really interested in exploring my faith again. She really just kind of, just put myself out there. But I would never go to a non-denominational church. I'd never go to an evangelical church. And this is proof why.
So this is a perfect example that faith is more caught than taught. You can talk about Christianity all you want, but people are going to look for your example. And it's by your fruits you will know them. This has been, for me, a real challenging conversation because there's people who are so pro her and anti her. But for me, I'm looking at this as, a broken clock is correct twice. And I'm not calling this woman broken, but when she called the pro-life center, she gave high praise to the organizational efforts of charity. But she even explained, I myself am personally pro-choice, which basically means pro-abortion. She didn't even have a child. And so while her tactics were not necessarily good, they are certainly effective in challenging us to the question, am I truly being helpful? Am I fulfilling the commands of God? Am I fulfilling the corporal works of mercy? Or do I only focus on the spiritual works of mercy? So am I being a true person who is holy? Or am I just being a hypocrite by saying good things, but not actually helping people in need? This is challenging me, and I hope that this challenge is brought to the forefront of every church leader immediately. Let me know in the comments your thoughts. What does your church do to help? And, like why this young man at the very end said he was very struck by the example of priests just kind of handing out cash. Depending on the situation, it's not always a good idea because you don't necessarily want to support people who just want to take advantage of you. I remember creating a program that provided emergency relief, but it also was contingent on getting them involved in programs that can help them so that they don't have to go from church to church to church just begging for $20 at a time. It's not always the best approach, but we've got to be able to help, especially when it comes to the basics. If someone is asking for baby formula or emergency food assistance, we better feed them. And why? Because Mother Teresa taught us a fulfillment of what Christ said, whatsoever you do. When did we see you hungry and poor or thirsty or naked? When did we see you in prison or in the hospitals? Whatsoever you do. I hope that this video helps you to get a more holistic approach to our Catholic faith. Thank you for all the churches that are doing great work. By your fruits, you will know what kind of tree you are, and we just happen to be connected to the tree of life. Please make sure you like, subscribe, share, and comment. Your engagement is necessary to overcome the algorithms. And as always, please support us on patreon.com/The Father Leo Show. We are doing very challenging work. I'm going to explain that in a future episode of what we're trying to do. But your support on patreon.com/The Father Leo Show helps us to continue to dish out faith, culture, and commentary. God bless you, and stay hungry for God.